Hi, thank you for watching. Today we're going to do a quick video on how to plant the Duarte containerized grafted grapevine. We're going to show all three different product format heights that we have in one video to help keep it simple. We have the standard height, we have the magnum height, and we also have our uber vine. Typically when a vineyard is being planted, whether they're replants or whether it's a full vineyard, we still recommend you doing your cultivation, maybe your ripping, your disking, also checking with your soil amendments to see what amendments you need to add back into the soil prior to doing your trellis system and your irrigation setup. This is the one time that you're gonna have, while everything's out of the way, to really make some good amendment changes out there for your future of your soil health and to really help those grapevines to grow. If you have the proper amendments in the soil, working with the right amount of water, you should get the best movement and growth out of your grapevines. So after the soil's prepped, the trellis system is in, the ground is pre-irrigated, and again, whether this is a replant situation or a brand new vineyard, this is the next steps to planting the vines. Your vines, when they come, they're probably gonna have a label on them. It's a great idea to take this label off and put it somewhere on your trellis system, maybe toward the end post. This label has a lot of really good information that tells you, and you can look at it in the future to see what variety, what clone, what rootstock, what nursery it came from, and which of their certified increase blocks that this plant material comes from. So this isn't something you're going to use to identify your whole vineyard as you're driving by, but this is going to be something that you can use to track back if you have some questions about the plant material later on. So on all the plants, you're going to squeeze the side of the pot. You're going to put it upside down, give the bottom a tap, shake it out like this. You do not rip or open any of the roots. That just makes new wounds and lets pathogens come right in. So you want to leave this root ball alone, and we're going to set it in the ground. You're going to choose what side of your stake you want to be on and be consistent with all the plant material. Some people don't even use full T-posts anymore, they use smaller stakes. Same thing, be on one side and be consistent. So then the root ball, no matter what size root ball we're talking about, there's a couple things to remember. We're going to put it in the ground. The top of this root ball needs to be about 2 inches, or you can say 2 fingers, or you can say 3 fingers, however you want to give your instruction to the people planting to keep it consistent. This needs to be below the natural soil grade. That means you do have to have this soil on top of this when you're done, because the only reason is you want to keep that moist. If this potting media is exposed, the wind will dry it out and all the roots will dry out, and it'll really work against you trying to irrigate these plants when they're this young. So again, I'm going to put it in. I only need it covered by 2 inches. If I get too deep, you can see where my graft union is right here. If that gets too close to the soil or gets buried, then we're going to initiate scion roots coming out of the top. So we really don't want to do that. So again, we're going to put the root ball in the ground, and we want to make sure it's at least 2 or 3 fingers, also known as 2 inches, below natural soil grade. So we do want this soil to cover it. Some people believe in having them taller, they're afraid of root rots. Those are for different issues and different types of plant material. So we want it covered. And again, then the next important thing is, where is my graft union? I don't want it any closer to the soil. So can you bury this deeper than 2 inches? Sure, you can go as deep as you want, but you don't want this being close to the soil, because this will make new scion roots initiate out of the top and take over, and then your rootstock is for no reason at all. So We want this planted as high as it can be, but covered by 2 inches of natural soil grade to keep this graft union up and out of the ground. Again, the same principles of depth and the root ball when we're doing the magnums and the ubers. I'm gonna take off my labels, put it on the impost, squeeze, push. Be gentle with my root ball, don't rip it, and don't pull it out of the pot like this. Sometimes guys do that and then you have just too much material falling out. It's not necessary. So keep all this together. We pay for this. This is the good stuff right here. We put it again. This right now is underground by about 2 inches, and I'm going to cover the soil back over the top. Okay. Now the the uber is another thing a little bit different. Let's move that. Okay, the very, very important thing about the uber also is going to dictate your depth. Again, don't go any higher. You don't want to go too high to have this exposed. So again, it has to be down a couple inches below natural soil grade. However, on the uber vine, our graft union is very tall. Depending on your trellis system setup, you may have your cordon wire right here. You may have it right here. You may have it right here. This is going to dictate if you need to dig this hole any deeper and sink this down. You need about a hand width between the graft union and that first trellis wire. So like I said, if your trellis wire is right here, then the plant's too tall because it's already at the wire or maybe even above the wire. If you're then going to train it, you're going to be training canes like this. You're going to be bending them back down, and that does not make for a good vine. It makes for a lot of blind buds right in the middle. So again, your uber vine has to be low enough to be about a hand width underneath the trellis wire. Now if my trellis wire is right here, you don't have to sink it down anymore. You can't raise it up anymore because you have the top of that vine again covered by the 2 inches of soil depth. So your trellis wire is going to dictate if you have to bury this any deeper or not. Okay, so now we're going to backfill the soil back into the hole, and this is where you want to make sure that you're at the right height and that your plant is up close to the stake. Also, people have a question on, do we put the bud at an angle away from the stake, into the stake, whatever. This plant's going to change a lot. I wouldn't focus too much on that. You can put it into the stake or away, but mostly your tying as you train up are going to change all those things. So don't slow down for that. Okay. So this is the point when you can get close to the stake and backfill. And you can use your foot, and you do want to tamp it down. You don't want to be aggressive. You don't want to feel like you're bending that root ball in half or crimping anything, but you do need to tamp down to get those air pockets out and kind of nicely settle that dirt in place. Another thing you should keep in mind at this point is right now, I'm gonna turn on my irrigation, and in particular, this emitter is right here because these are replants in an existing block. This emitter is right here. This emitter is gonna drip here. Depending on my soil type, if this is really heavy, it can just soak up the water right here and not really give it up to soak into that root ball. That is a different potting media. That potting media is really light and loose. So again, if this heavy soil with these small particles are gonna hold that water real tight, you may be looking at this and thinking, oh, I've got lots of water on top. But again, this is all we're really looking at right now. So maybe a spaghetti, if you have an emitter far away, maybe attaching a spaghetti hose to it, putting it over, and then using our grow tube to direct that spaghetti tube to go down over the vine. So I could have a spaghetti tube come along and go in here, or just tack it up to the stake. At this point, we're gonna put a tie around here also to hold all of this steady. So now backfilling and finishing off the Magnum and the Uber vine are really no different. The differences between them is we don't need a grow tube or a shelter on the Magnum or Uber vine, because as you can see, if we put a shelter on this plant, the green material that we're trying to protect is already all the way up and out of the shelter. So the reason the shelter would be, some people still like them for protection around this cutting or this trunk. Maybe some people are doing mechanical cultivation for weed control, or they think the rabbits are going to come and chew on them, whatever. But the idea of these taller product formats are also a part that you don't need that shelter, so you can save the money on the shelter, spend the money on the extra height already coming to the vineyard. So I'm going to backfill. And then to tie these Magnums and these Ubers, there's a couple thoughts. Yes, we like to get the trunk close. Yes, pretty snug. Yes, use your green stretchy tape. We do want the tape to stretch as the plant grows. The last thing we want is to girdle these young vines when we're trying to get ahead on them. Also, please be careful. Don't put a tie right around the middle of this graft union. I see people doing that. I think we all thought it was time saving, because we do want to tie high up, and we do want to tie to secure this union, so we also want to tie above it. Those are fine. If you decide to bypass this tie and just put one right above the graft union to secure this when the wind blows, I think that would be where I would spend my time and money. But don't go right around it. I've seen that girdle the plant really fast. So again, I'm going to choose, because this is a Magnum, I've tied it here. I'm also just going to tie it right here above the graft union. A really popular question is, do we need to do anything to these vines? Mostly they ask about the Magnums and Ubers right when they get them. Is there any pruning to do? If you get your vines in May, June, July, August, September, October, don't do anything to the top of them. Let them grow. Let them get leaves. The leaves are solar panels. We're feeding these new roots to go out into the ground and to help send carbohydrates down into this trunk when it comes time for them to go dormant. Then the next dormancy is when you're going to prune back to your two buds and go up really strong and go right out on that wire. So again, depending on where the wire is. Some people get a lot of growth if they plant them in April or even May. Some people get a lot of growth, and by June or July, they are making some sort of trellising or training cuts. But again, that gets back to your working with your rep and asking them advice, and having them or someone else come out and look at the plants and give you advice on them at that time. As soon as the vines are planted, turn on your irrigation system and let it run. At this point, you can't overwater these guys. And you can imagine that statement is going to vary, whether we're talking about April or whether we're talking about a fall planting of replants. However, we want to let it run. We want to flush out all the air that's in those little pockets. We really want those soil particles to get soft and melt right up against that root ball. Also, that interface of those soil particles up against this root ball we just put in, we need that to, throughout the summer, We need that to always stay soft so those roots can get out. Sometimes I see soils that we're planting in, they're really hard soils. It's even hard to dig the hole. Well, once you dig the hole and you put the vine in, just delivering enough water to that root ball may not be enough. You may have to get a little bit more to keep that native soil around it soft so those roots can get out. So turn the water on. Typically there's a gallon worth of water being delivered to each vine. So typically people will have 2 half-gallon emitters or 1 gallon emitter. So when you talk to your field rep, they may talk about how many hours to run it or what intervals to run it in. And if we're talking about an hour of water, we're talking about a gallon of water to the plant within the hour. So turn it on right away, let it run 4 hours, 6 hours. Some people let it run for 10 hours in the beginning. It's variable, but let it run for a while on the right away as soon as you plant that plant, and then talk to your field representative about how often to keep turning it on and when in the season to start pulling it back. Thank you for watching. I hope this answers enough questions to give you enough confidence to get started. And most of the questions that we went over are frequently asked: the depth, how to tie, how much water to put on. Please contact your field representative to ask them more details. And again, good luck on your vineyard establishment.